And now we have the final piece of information that explains everything about this very strange, quote-unquote, F-35 crash in South Carolina. Brand new piece of information was released today, earlier this morning, by CBS News that explains everything. But I'm going to warn you, you're probably going to want to pour yourself a tall, frosty, cold adult beverage of some type and sit down, because it's not really all that good news. It'll put an end to the story, but it will open up another one. Now, real quick, as always, I want to say thank you. Be diligent every single day and say thank you. Live a life of gratitude. Those of you who have shown up here every day, whether you agree, whether you don't, those of you who have signed up to the Patreon channel, it's only $1. It's only $1 per month. Even less if you sign up for an entire year, and fully refundable if the content over there is not for you. We can partner with Vimeo, do videos a little bit differently, and there's hundreds of videos over there. There's more than what you could probably watch in months and months between now and Christmas for that $1. So would love to have your support. Definitely could use your support these days for sure with censorship and with what YouTube is doing to channels like this. Now, I don't want to waste a lot of your time. God bless all of you who have signed up. Could really use the support. Now, who remembers this very infamous scene from Top Gun, where, of course, Pete Mitchell is trying to win the affection of the Kelly McGillis character. Woman turns out to be his civilian instructor at Top Gun school. He doesn't know it at this point. But why wasn't it something that we would have regarded as cringe at the time? See, a lot of us Gen Xers were teenagers when this movie came out, 16, and everybody in the bar at that time was probably in their 20s. You see, it's something you can do when you're in your 20s. You can act silly like this because that's expected of young people. But could you imagine all of these guys now trying to do the same thing to win a girl's heart? It'd be a little bit embarrassing, wouldn't it? For somebody in their late 40s, into their 50s, maybe their 60s, to do something like this. You see, it's very believable that all of these pilots at the Top Gun school in the movie were in their mid, maybe early 20s, but probably mid to late 20s, because of the amount of education and time that you would have needed to achieve this level. Everybody here it was very believable. In fact, the makers of the movie coordinated with the U.S. Navy to make sure they had all of their ducks in a row. Tom Cruise at that time was only 23. She was probably the oldest person in the bar at that time, other than the actor who was playing her boyfriend, who was supposed to be playing an older guy. But she was 29 years old, Kelly McGillis. Now, this is what's going to blow your mind, and this is the piece of information that everybody needs to pay attention to, because it has bearing in reality. The guy that played Viper, Tom Skerritt, at that time in 1986 was 53 years old. He's 90 now. This guy, Michael Ironside, he was the youngest. He was the assistant instructor at the Top Gun school. He was only 36 at the time, but I'm sure a lot of us thought that he was older than that. But the guy that was the commander of the aircraft carrier where Goose and Maverick were stationed, he was 55 years old in reality at that time. I forget the actor's name, but so they would be 90, 92, and 73. I think I have that right. 73. You see, this would have made sense for guys that were no longer pilots. They were instructors, because beyond a certain age, you lose your edge a little bit. That's why you have young men up in the air. Now, what's the story? This, to me, explains everything. Ejected pilot of F-35 that went missing told 911 dispatcher he didn't know where the fighter jet was. No, I thought that was just the most unbelievable thing. Didn't know where the fighter jet was. Really? Well, it makes sense. It makes sense when you read the details. A military pilot whose advanced fighter jet went temporarily missing over the weekend, pardon me, is heard repeatedly requesting an ambulance in a perplexing 911 call from the South Carolina home where he had parachuted to safety, allegedly. According to an audio recording released Thursday to the Associated Press, the 4-minute recording captures the bizarre circumstances for the 3 unidentified people involved, a North Charleston resident, calmly explaining that a pilot just parachuted into his backyard, the pilot who doesn't know what became of his F-35 jet, and a puzzled dispatcher trying to make sense of it all. Here's the quote from the homeowner. "We got a pilot in the house, and I guess he landed in my backyard, and we're trying to see if we could get an ambulance to the house, please," the resident said. The pilot, now pay attention here, the pilot, who was allegedly on a training mission from the training squadron. A training mission, you can look that up. Training mission from the training squadron at Joint Base Charleston, who said he was 47, reported feeling, quote unquote, okay after falling what he estimated was 2,000 feet. That is one heck of an ejection seat, isn't it? The aircraft is only 1,000 feet. And the ejection system launched him yet another 1,000 feet in the air? Odd. Only his back hurt, he said. Now, real quick poll. How many guys out there in my audience, Gen X, your back hurt? Generally speaking. How far would you have to fall for you to probably say, it hurts more than average? Would it need to be 1,000 feet? What if it was 100 feet? How many of you if you fell off the roof, would need to go find a bottle of something? Ibuprofen, Tylenol. 47-year-old pilot on a training mission. Ma'am, here's the pilot speaking. A military jet crashed. Notice he doesn't say my jet crashed. He says, a military jet crashed. I'm the pilot. We need to get rescue rolling. Rescue who? Rescue who? He's standing there on a phone call, having walked inside under his own power into a home, and is sitting there on a phone call with 911. The pilot said, I'm not sure where the airplane is. It would have crash landed somewhere. I ejected. Later in the call, he made another plea for medical help. Ma'am, I'm a pilot in a military aircraft, and I ejected, so I just rode a parachute down to the ground. Can you please just send an ambulance? The pilot said. The Marines have described the pilot as an experienced aviator with decades of experience in the cockpit, which absolutely makes no sense, given what happened. The F-35 crashed Sunday after a malfunction prompted the pilot to eject over Charleston. In a separate 8-minute dispatch call released Thursday to the AP, an unidentified official tried explaining that they had a pilot with his parachute, but no information about what happened to his plane or word of a crash. The pilot lost sight of it on his way down due to the weather. Now they're saying that there's a possible way the F-35 kept going. Apparently, there is a system that if the pilot ejects, the plane has the ability to sense whether somebody's hands are on the controls or not. And if there's nobody there giving physical inputs, whatever the last command was, it would do. Meaning, if it was set at stable level flight, that's what it would do. If it was set into a climb, that's what it would continue doing. If it was set into a descent, it would do that as well. But it wouldn't make any changes on its own. Now, remember the story about the autopilot? Quote, if the jet is stable in level flight, the jet will attempt to stay there. If it was in an established climb or descent, the jet will maintain a 1G state in that climb or descent until commanded to do something else. So clearly, it was commanded to do something else after he ejected. The Marine Corps said in a statement, this is designed to save our pilots if they are incapacitated or lose situational awareness. Now, this is something I've never heard of. I've heard of the idea of a jet erasing secure comms, but transponder codes, IFF being manual, nah. You see, that's another thing that protects our airmen, is that they don't have the ability to mess this up. See, why did I start with this? You see, these are young guys that are up around. They're supposed to be young guys up there flying, and sometimes they can, lose a bit of situational awareness, being the fact not that they're unqualified, but they're young and they're easily distracted. Hint, hint. Easily distracted in your 20s. So there's all sorts of safety things that are built into aircraft and have been built into aircraft for a long time that will, generally speaking, protect a pilot from his own distraction, which is pretty much what the entire movie was. A distracted pilot. A distracted pilot. So the long and the short of it is this. I'm sure there's people out there typing now saying, Florida Mucky, things have changed since the 80s. We're not flying F-14s anymore. The aircraft we fly now, basically, it's a giant video game. It's a huge electronic screen. It's not like it was, and it's you don't need to be as young as we needed pilots to be back then. Really. So you're saying it's like a video game. Real quick question for my audience. How many of you out there think one-on-one you could take out a 15, 14, 15, 16-year-old in a random video game that neither one of you had played before as a full-grown adult? You wouldn't stand a chance. You would get owned. Kids these days pick this stuff up so much faster, and especially if it's a game that requires hand-eye coordination and speed. As much as we have experience, as much as we have knowledge at our age, and yeah, we grew up with video games too, we would not be any match at 40, 45, 50, 55 years old for some 15 or 16-year-old. If this is the part where you need the stiff drink. If this is what we're putting up in the air, now, against this from China, it's over. I don't care how good the F-35 is. I don't care how good the F-22 is. I don't care how good the B-2 is. I don't care. If our pilots are in their 40s, pushing into this guy was 47 years old. He is not going to stand a chance against the PLA Air Corps, People's Liberation Army, i.e. China. Here's an Air Force pilot age breakdown, current 2023. 62% of the force is over 40. 20-something, only less than 10% of the current Air Force pilot corps that we have right now in the Air Force is the age these guys were at the time. To me, that explains everything. And if you're going to try to make some kind of an argument, I would refer you to the event where a particular pilot took off, got to 1,000 feet, ejected, because somehow the plane didn't do this, that, or the other. Plane itself kept flying for 60 miles. He said he fell from 2,000 feet. The Navy says he was at 1,000 feet when the ejection occurred, and I'm sure they have that information correct. He stumbles out into somebody's backyard, calls 911 for an ambulance, and has no earthly explanation why all this occurred. I don't think it probably would have taken the Chinese 28 hours to find their aircraft. Because what do we know? I mean, seriously, what do we know? Let's see if we can bring this up here. I forgot to bring it up. The aircraft All they would have had to have done is draw a straight line. Remember, it took them 28 hours, and they called the civilians around there. They called the civilians around Charleston, asked for help in finding their aircraft, when all they would have had to do is take a straight line from the end of their runway and follow it 60 miles, and they would have found their aircraft. That's all that would have had to have happened. It flew a straight line into the ground. And the pilot was 47 years old, wanted an ambulance because his back hurt. See, to me, this explains everything. It explains everything. Now, I'm older than the pilot is, but I don't pretend to be qualified to go back and do what I did in the military. I could probably do it for a day, maybe a week. But that'd be about it. Because of age. See, there's just certain things you don't do when you get to a certain age. You know, as cool as this looks in the movies, it's kind of funny for a bunch of 20-year-olds. But it wouldn't be funny. It would be horribly, ridiculously stupid and cringe for a 47, 48, 55, 60-year-old man to try to do this. Because you don't act like you're in your 20s when you're in your 50s. Why? It's real simple. It's real simple. In your 20s, you're easily distracted by a lot of things, into some that's, you know, that youthful rogue kind of thing going on, you know, is somewhat attractive for a second. But do remember, there was a moment when he also had a very young attitude that got him in trouble. And she's trying to call him out here on this. But some might say that's an argument to have 47-year-olds behind the, or in the cockpit, I guess I should say. Behind the stick. Apparently not. Apparently age or something or some type of dementia caught up with this guy. And that's just the case. If you're going to make the allegation that, you know, our technology is so much more advanced than the Chinese, our technology is so much more beyond, we're hosed. We're screwed. What's it going to be like 5 years from now? What's it going to be like 10 years from now? It's my argument against a current person running for the White House that shall remain nameless. Maybe he's fine now. What about 2 years from now? About 3 years from now? You're not going to win this. You never will, not long term. So, anyway, this might be a good Christmas gift. Who knows? But there's all sorts of different kinds of surrendering that goes on, and this one with age, with America, to me explains all of it. I don't know what was going on with him, you know, whether he was just having an episode, whether he was tired, or what it was, but 47 years old. 47 years old in a training squadron. Think about that. Think about that in the context of Top Gun. 47 years old? Ugh. Just no way. There's just no way. We should have fighter pilots approaching 50 years old. And I say that as somebody who's older than 50. It's just not, it's not in our best interest. And I think this is just evidence of it. So I will leave it there. Thank you so much for your support. I very much appreciate it. God bless all of you. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Pray for each other. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.